All right, great. I think we're all settled in, so we could get started here. Are we good in the back, Kyle? All right. All right, so today, welcome to our service. It is a Saturday, but it was one of those things where, you know, just got to kind of cut your losses, because if we don't have power, we can't even do like a Zoom service. And actually, for me, I 100% prefer like in person, you know. So just didn't want to, I was unwilling to let that go, you know. And I feel like we're just a lot happier here. I wanted to see the NC State people too. Didn't want to relegate them to a screen because we were going to do like a Zoom thing with you guys. And I'm like, I don't think anyone wants to do that. So if you are happy about that decision, just, just give it up. Just give it up. Okay. So today's message will be on John 12, and we're going to, I entitled it Worthy, just as a word to think about as we go along. And for this discussion, on the topic of kind of like making decisions, like if you think about in your life, it's full of decisions, small ones, big ones. So just as you think about maybe like, what's a recent decision you had to make? Maybe some of you guys had to make some big decisions in your life, or you are anticipating a big decision that you need to make in the future. What did you decide? Like, what did you end up deciding to do? And how did you figure out if that decision was worth it or not? Okay? So think about that, and maybe think of a story or a decision, some choice you had to make, because, you can't have everything, right? Sometimes you have to actually, a choice is in the exclusion of other options, right? So go ahead and discuss that with each other, okay? So I'll give you guys a good 5 minutes or so to do that. And get to know each other through that as well.
So bad. No matter what we do to be good, His grace is greater than that. There's nothing better than to know we belong. We've been adopted by the Father of love. Our brother suffered on the cross in our place. We are kids of grace. We are kids of grace. We are kids of grace. And in this broken world, the promise prevails. Our hope is Jesus, and His blood never fails. No matter what we do, He loves us the same.
All right, let's bring it back together. gonna go on a limb here, but any interesting stories came out of that discussion? Any of your groups that you want to just kind of call out? Nobody? How many guys involve like some kind of decision regarding like finances? Okay, we got some financial decisions going on, like which credit card should I apply to? You know, once you get to a certain age, it's like, yeah, like there's all these benefits, you know, like which one will give you the most points, and you kind of like go into this crazy loophole of like, you know, which one's going to give you the most like points for flights. You know, I don't know if you think about that, but there's people out there who really think about this, you know, and there's like websites dedicated to this. Or you could even think about like decisions, at least for myself, I talked about, yeah, when do you know when it's right to respond to semi-emergency like situations, like moving a service time, you know? And it's like, there's like risk involved. Like if we keep it tomorrow, we make everyone come here, like what if half of you guys get into accidents? Who's actually liable for that, you know? So it's like, there's a little bit of cost-benefit analysis, there's like risk analysis, right? How many of you guys thought about things like what major or like declaring your major, future career path type of things? How many of you guys talked about something like that? Wow, what'd you guys talk? Like, what else did you guys talk about? Like what to eat for breakfast? Okay, yeah, I got some of those, you know. Okay, all right, fair enough. How about like who you're gonna marry? Like your future, you know, oh yeah, you got breakfast and who you're gonna marry. That's funny, yeah. Got multiple choices in there, okay? And yeah, what's like the cost benefit or risk analysis? Like what kind of framework do you use to think about that? That's a huge decision. It's gonna affect the rest of your life, right? And it's like, is this person gonna really remain faithful? Is this person really gonna love me? How do I know that this person actually loves me, you know? All these decisions, you know, at the end of it, after you make the choice, right? There was that other part of this question, which was like, was it worth it? You know? So how many of you guys mostly like shared stories about decisions that you made the choice, and you're like, yeah, that was a worthy decision. How many of you are like, man, I totally got scammed. That was not worth. Oh, mostly positive. That's great. That's great. I don't know if you would apply that to like marriage though. Like, was it worth it that I got married to this person? I think what we could see is actually there are some instances of just some decisions where maybe cost-benefit analysis or risk analysis isn't really like you shouldn't use that as the first primary framework to think about some decisions, right? And so in today's text, we're going to get into this. I'm going to give you guys a chance to read this passage. What's going on here is that this is the eve of Jesus' crucifixion. The Passover is in 6 days. He was away because they were trying to kill him, and he comes back, right? He comes into Bethany, and he spends some time with his really close friends, this family, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Lazarus had died, and he raised him back to life, right? It was one of those crazy miracles that Jesus performed. It was the last sign before the passion of the Christ, right? And so that's where we are in the story of the Gospel of John. And so let's get into it. So in your groups again, let's read this passage, John chapter 12, verse 1 through 8, okay? So I'll give you guys a chance to read it and just share something about, like, what did Mary do? Okay, let's just answer that simple question. Like, kind of what did Mary do, and how does that impact you as you think about it? All right, go for it.
In tenderness she saw me, weary and sick with sin, and on his shoulders brought me back to his fold again. While angels in his presence sang, until the chorus
All right, so this story of Mary, right? It's a story that really captures what the gospel is, the beauty of the gospel, the challenge of the gospel, the power of the gospel, and we see it here, okay, in what Mary did. So what did Mary do? Well, let's jump right in. Um, Verse 1 actually provides, again, this context that I was talking about. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus, therefore, came to Bethany. So he's coming to Bethany. He's getting ready to go into Jerusalem. And for the Passover, all Jews would come to celebrate, to remember all that God had done for them in the period of the Exodus. Okay, so that's what this huge celebration is about to be. And then it says where Lazarus was, so this is Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there, and Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at table. So this is the scene. I'm sure Mary, Martha, and Lazarus must have been so glad to have Jesus come back into their home, and they must have been so glad to serve him for what they did for their family in raising Lazarus. Verse 3, Mary, therefore, right, in light of those things, right, in light of these things that is going on, there's the Passover and there's also the raising of Lazarus. Therefore, she took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever used perfume? How many of you guys use perfume or cologne? You know, those kind of products here. So, like, how do you apply that? Can you just show me, like, how do you do it? You know? Yeah. So if it's perfume, you know, you like put your finger on the top, right? You go like this, you know. You go this right here, this right here, this right, and this little jar of perfume could last you a long time. Or I guess in the modern times you would call it body mist. Okay, is that true? Yeah, it's like one of those things. You look at the label, it says body mist. I'm like, what is body mist? It's like this fragrance thing that you go, pss, 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 right? It aerosols this liquid. And so it kind of evenly distributes, get all over you, so you smell great, right? And so that's kind of how you use perfume. Now here in this picture of what Mary is doing here, let's kind of like understand a little bit about how much it is and all this. So we get that actually in the next passage. Judas, one of his disciples, he who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and having charge of the money bag he used to help himself to what was put into it. So the value of this pound of expensive ointment, we learned, is 300 days' wages. If you calculate it out, if you earn $10 an hour, that's about $25,000, okay? That's one thing to earn that amount of money in a year. It's another thing to actually like save that amount of money for how long? How long does it take? If you do the calculations, depending how much disposable income you have, it's anywhere from like 2 to 5 years or maybe even more. So you can imagine Mary, family has some money, or she has some money, she buys a little bit, adds a little bit to the jar. Adds a little bit to the jar. And so it's like this incredible picture of someone's disciplined, I guess, savings in this jar. And in some ways, people would actually save money in that form of something of great value. And in this case, it's like this spikenard. It's like this ointment or this perfume that was incredibly expensive, all right? And so that's kind of the value of this thing. And then what does she do? You know, $25,000, you can imagine, like, it's like a kind of decent car, okay? Decent enough car that'll get you to school and home and stuff like that, right? And she blows that amount in one go. So 5 years of savings, and in one moment, she actually is not dabbing it onto the feet of Jesus and his head and neck, but actually in another version in Mark chapter 14, verse 3, she actually breaks the neck of this jar because you can't get it out fast enough. So she breaks it and then pours it on his feet. In other accounts, it's like on his head as well. And so it is a very, almost you could say, wasteful expression of something, worship or love. What is it, right, that Mary is doing? If you pour out perfume, some of it might get on the ground, some of it might get on the clothes. It's like way overboard, more than what is necessary. So why is she doing this, right? I would say that this picture of Mary, though, is, it is a picture of love. And there are certain moments where we kind of can understand or kind of get, like, okay, this is maybe what she's trying to do. Maybe this is what she's trying to express. The contrast to that is Judas, right? Judas. It says Judas, who was about to betray him, he has some commentary about this, right? He has some commentary about this. He says, why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? He is looking at this with a very, it doesn't make sense. We could have totally sold this, she could have given it to us as a gift, and we could have had $25,000, and imagine the amount of ministry work that we could have done. All the needs that we have every day, Jesus. We're always scrounging for food. We don't even know how much we have for the next day. Like, he's the guy that has to do all the finances, and he knows how much he has in the money bag. Of course, it also says that he took it for himself. So there's this other element of greed and stuff like that in there for Judas. But this is kind of something for Judas where it's like, it's too much. This is just does not make sense, and it actually kind of makes him feel angry and indignant. And so you have kind of these contrasting pictures of Jesus welcoming this kind of worship, this kind of act. He says that it is beautiful. And then in contrast, you have someone like Judas, who's like, this is actually not a wonderful smelling aroma. It's described as this perfume, like once you open it, like you would have been able to smell it, all you guys in the back, like in an instant. It's like, whoa, whoa. And so that smell, though, isn't a smell of like, oh man, that smells so good. To Judas, it was a smell of disgust, And so he responds to something so beautiful in this way. So like, what's going on? Like, are there examples that we could try to understand, like, what is this? Like, what is this picture? How many of you guys watched the college championship football game? I don't mean to make fun of NC State or UNC, but I watched towards the end, because that's where the exciting stuff happens. I don't have that much time, So I watched the last quarter, parts of it. It was an exciting game, right? Those of you guys who watched it. What happens at the end of the game? Like one of those things that happens sometimes. Yeah. So they were filming the coach, right? And he was walking out onto the field, and all of a sudden you have these people come up right behind. I think it was blue Gatorade or blue something, and it's like, whoosh, and he just gets drenched. All that Gatorade, It's like a celebratory tradition. Now, can you imagine someone, like maybe one of the finance people on the side going, that was a waste of Gatorade. I don't know why, sorry, I don't know why I used that voice. Sorry. We could have saved that Gatorade for the next game, for the next practices. If we do this every time, we're gonna come on, can we, this is, why this waste, right? And all of us would laugh at that. Why? Because the game's done. Gatorade, it's like the guys are well hydrated. Anyways, if they're not, they'll rehydrate later. This is a time to celebrate. And so we're going to dump as much Gatorade as we have on our coach, because he basically won the game for us with that one crazy decision to have, I'm going too much in the details. They had the QB go for that run on the fourth down. That was amazing. That was beautiful. That was such a beautiful play. Sorry if you're a Miami fan. I'm not even a football fan, but I kept on watching that replay, right? And I guess you guys who saw that would understand how I'm feeling, right? And so the dumping of the Gatorade is a symbol of joy, celebration. It's not worth that much, right? But there is a little bit of that dumping, that pouring out. They're not gonna put it in a cup and go boop, that's just not appropriate, okay? If you imagine the picture of the love that a mother has for her child, oftentimes you'll see this, which is, you have the little baby and then baby's crying, so what do? Put the pacifier. I can't do that many sound effects, so bloop, okay, pacifier. Okay, baby has been pacified. What happens? Sometimes the pacifier goes bloop, and then it pops out, lands on the ground, gets a little bit dirty. Oh no, what does mom do? Picks it up, cleans it up, puts it back in, right? A mom is willing to do those kind of things and anything, actually, for her child. Way beyond, of course, just that kind of pacifier cleaning moment, right? I have a high school friend. Actually, I met him in middle school. He actually serves and leads in our church in Austin. And I remember when he was dating his now wife and was getting ready to propose, right? They were ministering at a campus out in East Bay in California. And where he took her, there was like this nice big hill, you know? And then so he and his girlfriend at that time sat down somewhere. And then he actually, in our church, he does a lot of lighting stuff, you know? And so he had set up these lights, like these, I guess it must have been like Christmas lights or something, that spelled out on the hill, you know, will you marry me, question mark, you know? So when the right moment came, he was like, flip the switch, boom, will you marry me? Wow, you know? How much time did that take him? He just wasted like full days of work. He could have gotten more money, you know, if he stayed at work, but he had to like take a PTO day out just to do that. I mean, come on, dude, you could just ask the question. I'm sure she's gonna say yes, right? You laugh again. Why is that? Because in the expression of his love for his wife, now wife, he is willing to spend that time. And that was one option of many other options of how am I going to propose to this person who I want to spend the rest of my life with, right? So was it worth it to do all that? I would say, yeah, it was worth it. Man, that was such a memorable moment. It's a great story that you could use in a sermon later, right? And so these are examples, you know, of where, like, how are we going to view these things? Is it a scandal, or is it like something, wow, it's beautiful, actually? And so when you think about this these two contrasting pictures of Mary and Judas, I think what we start to learn is that when we genuinely want to express love, and when we genuinely want to express devotion, should it be dabbed out? Not like this, but like dabbed out, you know, like this? Or is it maybe actually more appropriate to take the cap off of that ice cooler and go boom, you know, and go, will you marry me, right? Which of the two is it, right? And you think about your life, what is the pattern of your life? As you think about your life, if it was like a jug of, you know, 5 gallons of water or 5 gallons of whatever, that's your life. How does your life come out of you to bless other people? Is it just a little bit at a time, you know? Or is it like, oh man, I love people and I love this world. May the world be blessed by my life. Dump it all out, right? It's kind of challenging though at the same time when you describe it that way, right? Okay, what's another thing that we learn from this passage about Mary? And maybe why Judas, and actually it's not only him, we'll see in Mark chapter 14, there's like other people around are actually kind of responding in the same way as Judas too. Now, if you think about what Mary actually did, so there's the value of this thing, the way that she broke it and poured it out, and then there's actually what she did with this perfume. It says that she anointed the feet of Jesus, wiped his feet with her hair. I think we need to pause there and imagine if one of you guys literally did exactly this to another person here in this room. That would be uncomfortable, and I think a lot of us would look away and we'd be like, yo, oh man, like, I don't know if you should be doing that here. Like, there's all these other people here. It would, even in our day, almost like violate certain ideas of decorum, right? So what is Mary doing? First of all, Jesus' feet are dirty. And in those days, people would not even allow their servants to wash their feet because it's beneath even servants to do that because your feet are that dirty, right? Like if I took a shower this morning, but like let's say I took off my feet, my socks and my shoes, right? You know, it's kind of gross. Like, oh, he's getting his sweaty feet on the stage. Ooh, that's kind of gross, you know? But Jesus' feet, I mean, he's been traveling. He just came from Ephraim, far distance, I'm sure his feet are dirty. But Mary actually says, I'm going to wash his feet. But she washes his feet with ointment, this perfume. Not only that, she takes it to another level, and her hair is all like bound up. And in that time, in the Near Eastern culture, and I say even in some cultures here in present era too, like for a woman to like reveal her hair or to expose her hair was kind of like a scandalous thing to do. But Mary actually takes off her head garment or whatever, and then lets her hair come down, and then actually uses her hair to wipe the feet of Jesus. I think people in that room would have been like, oh my gosh, like this is unthinkable. This is anathema. This is, Rabbi, how could you allow this woman to do this to you? And so you get this picture as well. And it's like, what is going on? Why are people reacting in these negative ways to this thing that, again, Jesus said, she has done a beautiful thing to me? And how is it that Mary, if we are to pour out our lives, like if she is to be an example for us, let's say, how are we to imitate that? Like, what are the things that block us? What are the things that prevent us? And how is it that she's able to bring herself to a point that she does this? All right? Let's discuss that for a moment, because I think we need to think about it. All right? So, how is it that Mary is able to do this? All right? Maybe what attitudes in her heart are present? All right? So, spend some time thinking about that and discuss. Try to think about that and discuss that with each other. All right? All right, let's bring it back together. I don't know what you guys thought about, but I think maybe the attitude in her heart or something that describes what she did. And I actually kind of, introduced this phrase, which is, there's nothing beneath me that I would not do for Jesus. Even if it means I'm going to be beneath a servant. Even if it means it may look like I'm doing a shameful thing, but this is how much I love God. This is how much I love Jesus. And so what does it take for Mary to do this? What prevents Judas? This is basically what happens for Judas. This is it. He's like, I'm done with this. I'm done. After what she did to you, Jesus, I'm done. And after this, he betrays Jesus, right? And I think the key thing to think about is this, which is humility and pride. In order for yourself to be able to be and do something like what Mary did, you got to abandon your pride and embrace this picture of what does it mean to be humble. And I think that's what it takes. Someone who says, there is nothing beneath me that I would do for you, Jesus. That's someone who's actually humble. Like, humble is not thinking of yourself to be lowly. It's just thinking of yourself less, right? And I think that's what she does. Her eyes and her focus, her heart is like, wow, Jesus, I worship you. And I'm willing to do this, even in front of all these people, right? I think we can think about some examples of this. Maybe not quite to that level yet, but on the path to that. Like, what might it look like, practically speaking, for us? Um, I don't know. Like, as I think about, the various staff in our church here, right? Um, Working professionals, we say, right? Some of them actually went to pretty good schools, including UNC. Some of them actually got like other degrees. They're like pretty high up managers in their companies, things like that. And we have a cleaning rotation, and I find them cleaning the toilets, and I find them vacuuming the floor. I find people as I go to the fridge, on our cleaning days, emptying out everything and wiping it down, and it's meticulous work. This fridge might be cleaner than the fridge at their own house, right? And when we have like this rotation, there aren't people who are like, oh, you know what? I'm a manager at my company, so I could lead the cleaning, but I'm not going to do any of it, right? That's one thing I think is a strength of a community, is when there's people that are willing to do whatever to bless other people, even if it means things like that, right? And it's even something like this, like just thinking about it, even from a societal level, we get this. It's smart, college-educated moms who are willing to take a step back from their careers to take care of their, I don't know, special needs kids. If their child grows up and has autism, it's like not even a thought, right? It's I'm willing to actually take that step back. I think that my dad even was telling me stories of when he was growing up in Indonesia. The education system out there sometimes is quite different from what we're used to, because when we go to school, like, what are we conditioned? Yeah, the bathroom and like those kind of places is where you just trash it, right? You don't even think about who's cleaning it up, right? But in his schools back there, they would actually make the kids clean it, and they would take turns. They would have a rotation. And so he would tell me these stories about the kinds of things that they would do as students, And I thought, wow, that's a great training in just simple living, and just learning how to serve and learning how to serve other people. And I would say that creates people who are humble. My dad's actually a very humble person, and he had his own business, but he was a guy that, again, was the one cleaning the bathrooms. Sorry, I don't know why it just always, funnel theory to the bathroom. I don't know why. Okay. But in any case, I think the pattern in life that you should expect, that you should desire, that you should hope for, is that the older you get, the humbler you should become, right? And I think that would be like a crucial lesson if there's one to learn. I think if you look at the people in our church, again, like the oldest people in our church, I would say, not even necessarily right here locally in NC, but as you go to like AWC or you go to Elgin, and these are the places where you meet a bunch of other older folks, man, they're the ones that actually serve the hardest. They serve and they're willing to do whatever, whenever. And you wouldn't know how successful some of them are in their careers, or the careers that they left in order to do full-time ministry. Like one of my friends, he was an MD, PhD guy in San Diego. And in 2017, he gave all that up, and he led a college ministry out in Pittsburgh. And now he is serving in our church. This guy who everyone calls when there's a medical emergency, but he's actually handling a lot of just the basic logistics and management of stuff over there, And you wouldn't know, because these are the very people who are taking out your trash, These are the people who are kind of setting up the chairs, building the furniture or whatever, until you ask them and you realize, oh, wow, actually, these dudes were like lawyers and engineers and doctors and so on, and doing that kind of pouring out, right? So again, I think a second thing that we could learn is, how is it that Mary is able to do this? Why did Judas react in this way? And I think the contrast there is humility versus pride. And we got to, again, think about ourselves and examine, like, what captures my outlook on life? Do I see myself? How do I see myself? Do I see myself as someone who needs to be served? Someone whose preferences need to be met? Or am I someone who actually is like, I'm here for you. I'm here to serve. I'm here to benefit the people that are around me. Finally, what unlocks this? Okay, so we have a pretty challenging picture, I would say, of Mary. Mary's example of someone who pours out and someone who exemplifies humility. Now, all this, like I said, right, this story, this picture of who Mary is, she actually captures the gospel, the beauty of the gospel, the challenge of the gospel, the power of the gospel. Now, how is it that she did this? How is it that she did this? And I think one of the things that unlocks it is actually in this verse where Jesus says, "Leave her alone, so that she may keep it for the day of my burial." This, I think, is to be understood as she has kept this for my burial, right? She has kept this for the day of my burial. This is a shocker, I think. Again, the room is filled with people, and Jesus suddenly drops this word, burial. In other words, he's going to die? Jesus, what are you talking about? And this must have been a shocker for the people there, but as you think about this, okay, Jesus just talked about his death. Mary did this thing. So why did she do this? Perhaps there's a link with the fact that Jesus is about to die. When you think about the timing of things, like what's the right thing to do, right? Given a certain scenario, given a certain situation, Jesus said in verse 8, "For the poor you will always have with you." In other words, Judas, I get it. Yes, we could have spent this money and done a lot of things with it. But you do not always have me. In other words, this is the right time for Mary to do such an act of generosity, of love, of sacrifice, of pouring out. If you imagine back in the days, like the scene is World War II. America is about to go into war, so what happens? Like there needs to be a draft. There's a call for the draft, and you realize, oh man, like Dad got drafted, and so everyone's gathered. He's about to, get shipped out, and what do? You have the family dinner together, right? Those last few days, the last 6 days. This is the 6th day before the Passover, the 6th day before Jesus is about to get crucified. What do you want to do? You want to spend time with that person who's about to go, who's about to, know if they're going to come back. Final meals, the final gatherings, the final goodbyes. And imagine in the middle of a meal, someone says, "Oh, hey, are we done now? I gotta go. I gotta get back, to organizing the garage. Look, there's always things to clean. Now's not the time. You can clean later. I gotta go do my homework. Or I gotta go back, I was on level 6, whatever, Minecraft, and I hit pause. I gotta get back to that game. Gotta catch up on my ministry stuff. I have so much stuff to do, like, are we done with dinner? There will always be work. The work you will always have with you. But man, I'm getting shipped out in a couple days. And so what's your situation now, right? This was Jesus' situation. What's our situation now? And going back to that first question that I asked, how are we going to decide how we are going to live? Are we going to dab our lives, that perfume, one drop at a time? Or is it perhaps, life is meant to be poured out. And Jesus, I'm ready to serve you. Nothing is beneath me. And I want to live this life of humble service. So again, if we go back to that question, how did Mary become this humble? How did she abandon her pride? Well, if you think about Mary and kind of like this, the story arc of Mary that we have throughout the Gospels, when you first meet Mary, what is she doing? Jesus is teaching, Martha is cooking in the kitchen, and Mary's at the feet of Jesus. She's listening to what he's saying. She is hungering for what is Jesus saying. And I think she must have reflected. She must have been able to detect and read in between the lines, because Jesus talked a lot about his death, the fact that he was going to die, all right? In John chapter 1, verse 29, he said, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." She's thinking this is Passover. Maybe, I'm just imagining. This is Passover. On this day, this is when the Passover lamb is selected and now goes into the family home and lives with the family. but it's on its way to be sacrificed. And so I imagine Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus, learning these things, and she's starting to connect the dots. She was someone who reflected over the teachings of Jesus. What else do we see? Last week, it was John 11. Lazarus died. They asked for Jesus to come, and then Jesus is looking for Mary. Mary runs out to meet him, and what does she do? She falls at his feet. She says, Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Where were you? And she grieves. And Jesus responds by grieving together. He also weeps. He sees the situation, the impact of sin in our world, the fact that it results in death, and he too grieves. So Mary, we find her bringing her deepest griefs to Jesus. And here in this third example, what do we see? She knows Jesus is about to be crucified, that he's about to die. She has this thing of, she's like looking around, like, what do I have of the highest value, the best thing that I could give? She knows what's about to happen. Again, she is at the feet of Jesus. Feet of Jesus are dirty. I'm just going to pour this out, and I'm going to clean the feet of Jesus so that I can anoint him to get him ready for his burial, right? That's kind of the customary thing you would do. And man, this picture of Mary, like this is the story arc that we have. She sees Jesus as, that chosen lamb of the final Passover who's going to be sacrificed for her sins, for all of our sins. And I think that realization must have hit her and moved her. Of the sort of like, when it culminates in this realization that you would do crazy things as, will you live the rest of your life with me? Will you, we just won the game, pour it all out, and you realize this person is the Son of God, and he's about to die for our sake. It's like the most amazing message. And in response to that, what does she do? She's like, I'm going to give Jesus the best thing that I can find in this house, which is that alabaster jar of nard, right? Man, so we think about this, right? Like, how should we live our lives? We should pour out our best to the one who poured out his all to us with that same kind of generosity, that same kind of humility. And so there's a decision that we all are faced with. Like, how are you going to live your life? How will you live? What is the best that you have? And who deserves that best? And I would say that Jesus deserves our best. Look at how he loved you. He laid down his life. The good shepherd lays down his life for his flock. And so as you think about this, really John, in writing the Gospel of John, he's getting us to really think about this. And he shows us these two contrasting reactions and responses to Jesus. Either you're going to allow yourself to be used by God, or you're going to be the sort of person that's going to use God for whatever thing that you want in your life. Either you're going to be sold out for God, the best that I have, my life, my time, my resources, I'm going to give it up to you, Jesus, in this kind of wasteful, pouring out kind of way. You're going to be sold out for God, or you're going to sell him out. That's exactly what Judas does. Jesus, when we look at Mark chapter 14, there's this other thing that he actually says. And he says, truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her. Like, what is he saying? What he's saying is that what Mary chose to do, that actually captures the gospel. And it captures precisely what Jesus did for us. It's just like what Jesus taught in Matthew 13:44-46. He taught two parables, a pair of parables, right? The kingdom of heaven is like a man who found a treasure that was hidden in a field, and in his joy sells everything that he has and buys that field so he can get that treasure. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who found a pearl of great value, sells all that he has, goes back to the merchant and buys that thing because it is that great value. You feel like you have a lot of potential in your life, And I think the instinct is that we want to just harness it for ourselves, optimize, maximize all of our decisions for our own benefit. That's the cost benefit, that's the risk analysis that we make oftentimes. But Jesus actually is the one who had the most potential, and yet he gave it up for you and me. And so when we think about Mary, she captures Jesus' life. And so what you realize is that Mary and Jesus are like the same sort of people. And Judas is kind of seeing this, and he's like, that's not me. I am not that. I don't want to be that. And so he distanced himself in that way. Bring back to the idea of decision. How do you decide about your life? There is this missionary, her name is Helen Roosevelt. And oftentimes when she thought about, like, how am I going to make these decisions? Like, what should I do with my life? She was trained as a medical doctor, and she later became a missionary, right? And went through a lot of trials in her life. And she always kind of would ask this question, like, is it worth it for me to do this? Like, should I be doing this? And she realized in one reflection that that's not the right question to ask. The right question to ask, rather, or not even a question, is just to simply say, it's not a matter of, is it worth it? It's the fact that he is worthy, that Jesus is worthy. He is worthy of my life indeed. And so my prayer for you and for myself is that this is how we're going to be able to decide regarding our lives. That yes, Jesus is worthy. He is worthy to move you to live a humble life of serving him and others, worthy to give our best. And so, what's the best that you got with your life? Pour that out for his service. There's one story that this reminds me of is I remember one time, I think it was talking to a missionary, Mike and Cindy Edson. And Mike, we were just sharing about our lives, and he went through a lot. Like, he went through drugs, like he was addicted to drugs. He was addicted to pornography. I think he barely got out of high school. But yet, man, he is pouring out his life. He has poured out his life for decades, in East Asia. I'm not East Asia, Uzbekistan. And and I remember talking to him, and he was like, "Wow, Richard, you have a PhD. Man, you have like all these educational opportunities. Man, I am so envious of you because you have so much more to give to God. All I have is this little old me and my broken story. All I have is just my physical strength. But man, you have so much to give to God. Imagine what God could do with your life if you pour it out for him." And I remember that really stuck with me, that picture. So what's the best that you have? It might seem wasteful if you consider pouring out your life for God. Others may look at you and actually in the same way as Judas did, say that same thing to you. Why this waste? You're just wasting your life with this Jesus thing, man. It's just a phase. It's just a fad in your life. What's that going to do for you? What's that going to do for your bank account? But to look at that and hear that and say, no, I'm going to do it nonetheless. Because this is what the gospel is. I want to embody the gospel in my life. And so how are you going to write, the story of your life? You saw the story of Mary, your own story, and the decisions you have to make. And it does kind of end up in that two camps. Which camp are you going to be? So I'm going to leave you with that, this picture that we get from John chapter 12 about Mary and her alabaster jar, which really embodies a life that says this, Jesus, you are worthy, and I want to pour out my life for you. So I'm going to give you guys a chance to think about this and share about this with each other, and we'll have a chance to pray through these points, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's pray together. Jesus, indeed, you are worthy, and we desire to give you our best. Lord, I pray that we would be able to embody the gospel, the same thing that Mary did to you. Lord, that we would seek to pour out our lives with joy upon finding and meeting and knowing the creator of the universe and the one who has created us and has loved us to this extent. Lord, I just pray that we would live lives of humility, just as you did, lowering down and descending and laying down your life. Lord, may we do the same, being willing to do whatever, wherever, whenever, to express our love and service to you. So thank you again. Give us strength to do that this week. Keep everyone safe. And in the name of Jesus, we pray, amen. All right, you guys can all have a seat. And